I can't think about this democracy. 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 Democracy, demonstration of praise, praise demonstration. If you not be praised, why for Africa? As time we go, things just stay bad more and more. Democracy, crazy demonstration of praise, crazy demonstration. Democracy, crazy democracy, crazy demo. I can't think about this democracy. 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 Crazy demonstration of praise, crazy demonstration. If we not be praised, why for Africa? As time we go, things just stay bad more and more. Democracy, crazy demonstration of praise, crazy demonstration. Democracy, crazy democracy.
Okay, what it do? Sober Soldier salute. This is Stick from Dead Prayers with my partner M1, and you are in tune to gotkushTV.
There was empires in Africa called Kush, Timbuktu, where every race came to get booked. My success to you, even if you wish me the opposite. Sooner or later, we'll all see who the prophet is.
Achomi na Jelly Bojokwe, Nimbiane Nyanko, gotkushTV, Nyeradon. My name is Na Jelly Bojokwe, and right now you're watching gotkushTV. Thank you.
Tenamwari, greetings, brothers and sisters. We are live once again in the building over here on gotkushTV for another edition of Ghana Democracy Under Fire. Yes, indeed, brothers and sisters. And in the subject seat today, brothers and sisters, is the topic of beyond strict ideology and politics. Yes, indeed, beyond strict ideology and politics. It's all happening, brothers and sisters. Let me, without further ado, introduce you to my co-host. Before I do so, let me apologize for some scheduling conflicts and conflicting information that went out early today, brothers and sisters. Please bear with us as we engage, everything and keep everything in order. But we are pleased that you are with us nonetheless. And we, know that our show today is going to be blessed and informative, brothers and sisters. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So without further ado, let me introduce to you our co-host for the evening, the one and only Gbontwi Anyetei. Greetings, Gbontwi Anyetei.
Yes, sir. Good evening. I'm glad we're meeting again today. Yes. I feel like I want to apologize to our audience that we weren't able to be with you last week. I know my favorite podcasts. I like the ones that are reliable, and I can set a time to and know, okay, this time of the month that means okay, it's going to be happening this or this or that. So yeah, we're gonna try and keep it regular for you. Just if you are in Ghana, you know how hot we are. The climate, the climate, and so much going on, and the power situation is is blocking too many things, but I refuse to allow this podcast to be one, because ironically, to let the power situation block us is letting the puppets win twice. They're already stealing it from us. They're already suppressing our destiny. And on top of that, we're going to let them block podcasts that should be recording. No, we cannot allow it. So 100%. We are here.
Do you know what, Budgie? It just occurred to me that this is quite a story that people who are even casually in tune with African politics may know about, yeah. So I don't know, like it might be an idea just to give our viewers an idea of what going for the power in Ghana. Like apparently it's been running fine, you know, as far as Ghana goes for the last few years, and suddenly in the last month or so, everything's gone haywire. What go on? You know what I mean? What go on in Ghana?
I mean, it's actually crazy that I can't even sit here. I mean, my disgust with the government notwithstanding, I cannot actually sit here and, if objectivity exists, objectively tell you what is normal in Ghana as far as power. You'll recall that, was it our last session, Beyond Cathedrals? We talked about the power deal, right? We talked about the power deal. So there was this deal that was supposed to go ahead, and ECG, that's the electricity company of Ghana, which is of course a national company, was to be sold to a private entity. Now, part of the rationale behind that was how bad the power situation was. So first of all, don't believe the hype. Even within the normalized chaos of Ghana power, don't believe any hype that the internet power has been good for the last, specifically 8 years. That is the term of the current government. Because if it wasn't for the bad power, there wouldn't have been that added excuse, which we know privatizers always run to first, as to why the thing should be privatized, because it wasn't running well. So that already was a thing. But yeah, there's with all things, including the conversation we have here, I hope your audience can bear us out. With my work as a member of the Economic Fighters League, with my work as a member of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, I always want to make sure that all my, you would call it complaining, whining, observations about our problem is always twinned with solution orientation, thinking about, okay, how can we solve this? Ideally in a revolutionary context, but in a short-term sense, pending a revolution, what can we do about it? And the power situation is just one of those things that is hard to stay on that line around. It's so frustrating. In the last, I was telling you earlier, in the last 48 hours, I haven't had power more than I have had. Literally a 25 hour power cut. They gave us 3 hours light. I guess that was to charge our phones, and then they took it again for 5 hours. So it's extremely frustrating. There's no such thing as normal. There's differing takes. One that makes sense is when the city is struggling, and because Ghana is an oil producer, but we don't, of course, as usual, we don't refine any of it. So as is one of many contradictions, the very oil that we produce is sold to us, back to us at a premium, as is the same with our cocoa and chocolate and in our gold, in the sense of how we buy, designer jewelry and stuff, when the stuff came from our soil in the first place. So what the take on that then is, because of the way our city is struggling against the foreign companies, the power systems are powered, and that's, our utilities, I should say, are powered by fuel that we are buying from foreign bodies. So when our city is struggling, it then behoves the ECG, in this case that we're talking about, to then reduce the amount of power that's available, because they literally cannot afford the
So
fuel
keep
to
it right.
power the utility system.
Right.
So that's the practical thing, the practical sort of reason. The big series of light-ups that we had, locally known as Dumso, was in 2015, which was 2 years after I moved back, and I'd never experienced anything like that. Obviously, growing up in London, every time the power went off, it was literally something to do with your house. There was something going on with that. You know, there was never. I'd heard of some people experiencing like actual area power cuts. I never experienced it growing up in the UK.
Yes.
And yeah, so now you've got to just work out what you're doing, the way it affects how you plan your day, and unpredictability. It's straight out of Frantz Fanon. So I guess, although I can't think around the solution around it in the short term, it does remind me to think global on these things, and remember that, okay, you know, when Frantz Fanon and even Fela Kuti, of course, talks about the level of despair and unpredictability and not knowing where your next power source is coming from, all this kind of thing. You have to remind yourself that this is what is creating a big factor in the African or the Ghanaian mindset. You know what I mean? How can you think 10 years ahead, 20 years ahead, like serious countries and serious citizens do think that far ahead, when you cannot even predict whether you're going to have electricity over the next 20 minutes?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the way you plan things, and so that it humbles you to have that lack of control, and it also reminds you, it's part of what we're going to be talking about today. The conditions that have shaped the mentality of you know, my fellow Ghanaian.
Yeah. Interesting. You know, I guess we're gonna have to make a I'm not even sure if we got that on the list, you know, just looking at a whole episode just on Ghana's power, but it would be an interesting one, you know. I'm reminded of in the book Black Africa, like half the book almost is about finding power sources, to fuel energy, energy sources to fuel power, in throughout Africa, and that book was written in the 60s, you know what I'm saying? So you know, our ancestors were ahead of the game, man, on a lot of topics that we haven't really picked up the ball on properly, you know what I'm saying? So
fully, because industrialization has intentionally been taken off the agenda of a lot of African countries, even by we who consider ourselves revolutionaries, because once it's been taken off the agenda for us, and kind of like nobody's talking about it, to bring it up in addition to all the other things that we've got to deal with can be challenging. It can be challenging. So sometimes we fall into that trap that has been set for us, but we should never take it off. The power of manufacturing, value addition, and things. You literally cannot put a price on it. There's literally no price on it. There's what you get from the value of the commodity that you produce and what you add value to, and then there's the sense of pride, and then there's the supplementary economies that go around the industrialization that take place, which is what Nkrumah had in mind with his industrialization plan and his state enterprises. You know, ironically, one of the things that he's criticized about by people who don't know better, or who do and are intentionally being, you know, oppositional, is how he was placing factories and silos all throughout the country. People were always, so many of his critics as I said, some who did know better, some who didn't. Who have the feeling, oh, just Accra, just Kumasi, okay, maybe Takrady, maybe. But when he was there, they were seeing him placing these rubber factories in the western region, not in any of the metropolises. They didn't understand, but he understood what factories of the right kind would bring. You know, he had traveled to the US. He knew the Clevelands, the Detroits, places that had no claim to fame, basically, but all of a sudden they had, you know, car manufacturing and so forth, and then they became a power. And you know, for a good while, you know, New York and Los Angeles couldn't talk to those places, you know what I mean, because they were employing people in the era when, you know, especially when America was on the gold standard, people were able to feed their entire family on one salary, feed your entire family and have 2 cars and send somebody 1 or 2 children to college, all on one salary. Not that we're excusing, of course, the sexism that was keeping women out of employment, but
of course.
Another conversation. So
Sorry, go on. Do you know what's funny for me though? Oh, sorry, go on. No, it's interesting to hear what you're saying, right? And the critique that Nkrumah faced for that. But living in the UK, that is a massive problem in like the mouths of every politician and communities in the north of England. So whenever you hear, for people that follow UK politics, whenever you hear the term leveling up, this is a plan to basically like develop the north of England because it's been severely underdeveloped, through industrialization, through the digital era, and so on and so forth. There's just not enough infrastructure, even trains in the north of England. So people are always complaining about that, because basically development was concentrated in the south, like, and the closer to London you were, the more development kind of came to you, even in relation to new train lines. There's a big debate about high-speed rail and the extent to which there was supposed to be high-speed rail from London going up to Manchester, and it started in London. But the argument was that if they started building it in Manchester to come down to London, it would not have been axed. So that program was axed recently, because it started in the south, they axed it partly because they could afford to axe it because it started in London. So they're not really committed to developing the north. So it just goes to show, right, that again how forward-thinking that generation was. And you talk about criticisms, we can agree or disagree with them, but it's always good to know that some of the issues that they saw at the time are issues even in quote unquote developing countries that we say are wealthy today. You know what I'm saying? So I know we're kind of off topic at the moment, but it's an important one. You know. No.
I don't think we're ever off topic, because we know our audience are from all over the world. So yes. It's important when we have this conversation, wherever you are in the world, you are going to see elements of what we're discussing, whether you are in a minority or whether you are in a majority. You know, whether you are in the global south or whether you are in the west, you're going to see examples of this. And you're going to see what happens when greed hits you, because all the likes of these places, the Baltimores, the places where people used to have docks and all of this kind of thing, and because of greed, it was all outsourced and stuff. Like the same mentality around that is what has Ghana looking like what Ghana is right now. So, you know, it's important that people see examples of these mentalities around them, because one of the driving points, I know you're going to ask me, but let me get a head start on it. One of the driving points behind suggesting this conversation for us today that we're going to have is this thing around being able to empathize with, in this case, Ghana, but also wherever you go, to understand, you know, why is it like this? Because that's a question I think I hear get asked a lot for people who come to Ghana, and then for Ghanaians who go outside. You know, why is this allowed? Why do you allow that? All this kind of thing. It's because this particular example of it is not familiar to you.
Right,
but there's examples of it near you that you should be able to relate to and say, oh, okay, if it was allowed here like this, then I understand how it's taken place, in this country over there. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to the
100%.
conversation.
All right, brothers and sisters, you know what I'm saying? So giving thanks to all those who have joined us so far. Once again, if you're just joining us, we know that there's been some conflicting information being put out there today. So we thank you for, in terms of what our show will be today, I should say. So we thank you for bearing with us. We're here today for episode 3 of Ghana, Democracy Under Fire. You're lucky because you're probably going to get 2 episodes of our Ghana podcast this month, brothers and sisters. So do stay tuned.
That's the plan. That's the plan. That's the plan.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So consistency is most definitely important where these things are concerned. So yeah, we're here, and our subject today is beyond strict ideology and dialectics. Yeah, beyond strict ideology and dialectics. Let's explain the title of our show today, Gbontwi Anyetei. What does that mean? Beyond strict ideology and dialectics.
It's extending on from the why is this allowed. It is that's where I'm coming from with that question, or that phrase, that term. Why has this been allowed? And what is the state of education, or state of orientation, I should say, better, sort of political orientation in Ghana that this has been allowed? Is it a lack of understanding of ideology and all the other things, sort of connected to it? Or is that understanding there and we've chosen a side, kind of thing? Like, how much intentionality is involved, I think is the best way of putting it.
Okay. Well, let's get into it. What's where we gonna go with this first? What we're gonna explore first in relation to this topic of.
So we're talking about sort of mindsets, right? Yes. So the first thing, a person who sort of comes into Ghana, they see how much injustice there is, economic imbalances. Why are people not doing better than this? And so I wanted to start with the unions.
Right.
I think for your audience, for our audience, I think wherever you are in the world, unions serve a particular purpose. And the good thing about them is that, yes, they're essentially known and accepted as a left, to use that expression, a leftist socialist construct. But even in countries with runaway capitalism, there are unions, and unions are usually able to some degree, that can be debated, of course, restrain the excesses of capitalism, right? So then the same question is then asked about Ghana. What are Ghana's unions doing?
Good question.
And the answer, I would say, is nothing. And we're gonna, this is, these podcasts are not just going to be me throwing, point fingers at, other institutions. We're gonna have a podcast where we discuss my own Economic Fighters League in my own AAPRP, to challenge us as well about, okay, what are you doing in all of this? So it's not just finger pointing. But that's what you have with with the union thing, is that every year, maybe twice, about twice, maximum 3 times. I think twice usually is the max. You get some threats from a union, usually around pay, saying, okay, we're going to organize a walkout. Sometimes teachers. Sometimes ministries, so public workers, I should say, public sector workers, and then more commonly nurses. I'll say nurses at least once a year. They do have that. Now, the reason why we're using this ideology, so what do we mean by ideology? It's actually funny that I don't know if you find this. I'll throw that question at you as well. Okay, let me put that before I even say more. Do you feel like when people speak about ideology, they say it, that they mean it specifically around revolutionary thoughts?
Yes, to a significant degree, because people don't consider the fact that the government that they exist under has an ideology. They treat the government, political ideas, policies, as though they are just reality, right? Just
exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So like it's not considered like Westminster's democracy is not considered ideological. It's considered a virtue. Right, just I'm saying, Washington consensus is not considered an ideology; it's considered an aspiration. So it's you, crazy, folks, idealistic folks who have ideologies. Whereas people that deal with real politics don't have ideologies, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So there's this massive myth, and I'm glad you borne me out there. Because yes, I've heard the same from different conversations in and out of Ghana, in and out of the continent. And I definitely get that feeling that people feel an ideology is anything that challenges the status quo. And that is whether it's socialist, that's whether it's Black nationalist. But that what is there is just neutral, is some kind of objective reality, exactly like you're saying. It is what it is. And I really do believe that understanding that your presiding government is working to an ideology would be a huge turning point in Africans mobilizing where we need to. Because if you stop thinking about your country as just a series of politicians who maybe they're intelligent, maybe they're not, maybe they're efficient, maybe they're not, maybe they're honest, maybe they're not. And you start thinking of them as, okay, when I analyze this person's actions for the last month, 3 months, what set of beliefs is he or she or they supporting, working towards? I think we as citizens would become very much more dangerous. And that's not where we are as a mass population in Ghana. I don't think there's any country, with the possible exception of maybe 3 or 4. And I think they're basically all in South America. Or in Cuba, there's Cuba, Venezuela, Bolivia, and then Chile. Like, these are countries where you can debate.
Those ones fall into what you're saying, though. Those ones fall into what we were discussing, because they, to the extent that there's a strong element within those countries that is challenging the global status quo, if that makes sense. So they're characterized by the rest of the world as ideological in their government, right? That's what I'm saying. So whereas like Washington is the norm, and if you're challenging that norm, even in the slightest, right, then now you're on an ideological point of view. Whereas the America is dealing with real politics.
Exactly. I think why I mentioned them is to say that I think in their maintaining of that position is their understanding that incoming is an ideology. When you have a revolutionary leader or a revolutionary state of affairs for whatever time it's lasting, we know that, I would call it mammon, white monopoly capitalism, white supremacy they are going to come in and they're going to sponsor and fund anybody that can speak to either their point of view or anybody that's going to challenge. Now,
100%.
if you are not aware of the fact that you're, like you're saying, Washington, DC, London, France have ideology, you fall straight away in the trap of, it's just freedom of speech. It's just freedom of speech, because they're objective, of course. So if you're not allowing their point of view to come in, it's freedom of speech you're challenging. Whereas you could have a more interesting conversation if you say, no, because of the state that we're in, I am not pro this ideology and messaging from this ideology.
Right.
You know what I mean? And yeah, that is sorely lacking in Ghana. Our unions are basically have proudly mimicked state apparatus by being very polarized and being very partisan between the two premier parties.
Question.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned teachers union, you've mentioned
nurses
union. What are the other significant unions in Ghana?
Then you've got the it's got such a long title. Basically, the public drivers, taxis and buses.
Oh, they're unionized. I didn't know they were unionized.
Yeah, they're unionized. So actually, the price hikes are agreed at a union level before they come to the public. So they have talks with various government bodies.
Sorry, this is not when you say public like drivers. So we're talking about Uber drivers.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, so actually Uber drivers are not part of it. That's another conversation. Okay. Uber drivers have to opt out, but regular taxi drivers, regular taxis, bus drivers,
in union, right? But not Trotro. The Trotro drivers are not in.
No, and Trotro are in it.
Is it the union? Okay,
yeah,
interesting.
Yeah,
okay, interesting.
Cool. So yeah, that's what you get.
Just to clarify, from what you're saying, that generally speaking, these unions are aligned to a political party, so either NDC or PPP.
I wouldn't say that they're aligned. I would say the leadership, the individuals.
Right.
You know what I mean? So they mimic state apparatus in that they have their internal voting and stuff like that, and then it's known, depending on whatever political game that they play and different machinations, that so and so has won, and he is known to be NDC friendly, NPP friendly. Do you get me?
Right. I understand. Now I'm asking that question because it's interesting how our politics in the African diaspora replicate each other. So in the independence era in the Caribbean, speaking specifically of Jamaica, that was one of the major games that was played, to try and co-opt the unions into neo-colonial political, to be allegiant to neo-colonial political parties in various different ways, and kill off or destroy unions who did not and would not play that game. So one of the reasons why Marcus Garvey was hounded out of Jamaica, right? You know what I'm saying? In the 1930s, because he wasn't playing. He didn't want those unions to be aligned to neo-colonial, or at the time the straight colonial political parties. You know what I'm saying? So right there, go ahead. Side. Exactly.
This is no. Apologize, please. This is why we're having the conversation. This is why we're having the conversation the way we are. Ghanaians love talking about politics. All the Ghanaians on this podcast, in the chat right now, will 100% agree that we love talking about politics. So for me, this is not just going to be a conversation about politics. This has to be a conversation about how we're doing it, where we're connecting the international element. We're seeing what we share with others. It's one of the key reasons why, even long before I moved back to Ghana, I was a Pan-Africanist, because what little I had studied, and I still consider myself to have studied little, because every time you turn around, there's new books, there's new conferences and new papers. There's levels of basements in the British Library we don't know about, in the British Museum we don't know about, that we, you know, so you can never say that you're widely studied in anything, but as expansively as you can study, I've just seen that everywhere I look, there's similarities. So and that's where the dialectics part of the title of our conversation comes in. It's like, how do you combine these things to make it work? Because it's going to vary from country to country, ethnicity to ethnicity, time to time. So part of that Pan-Africanist effort is not just all the usual things that get talked about, shared interests, mutual interest, shared negotiating position, and all the stuff that comes out of the Ubuntu and solidarity element of things. Is learning, oh, what did you guys experience 50 years ago? Okay, what happened next? You understand? And bringing those lessons, to your place and trying to run with it. You know what I mean? So definitely no apology needed there. So yeah, going back to the union thing, and then you've got the public sector. Public sector is quite big, and then you've got teachers, and then you've got the trade. I'm trying to remember what their one is called. I guess you just basically the blue collar engineers. I should have got information on that one, but you've got the those who provide the kind of like mechanical and electric support. Not just any, or for all I know, maybe any mechanic can join or any engineer can join. But as I understand it, it's specifically engineers that work for sort of, big companies, multinationals and stuff like that.
So there's different levels here now then, because the education, although people pay for education in Ghana, to a significant degree, there has been some talk of free education under this last MPP government. But generally speaking, the education is state provided. Is that correct? Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. And then
we could have a whole conversation about the states of free education in Ghana and stuff like that.
Right.
But officially it's state provided. Right? Yeah.
Then the healthcare system, again, people pay for it at the point of delivery, but it's supposed to be state provided, right? So there's not private corporations running the healthcare. And the national transport.
You generally don't pay for the health care. You pay for the medication, as I understand it. So So when you go,
the medication comes from private corporations, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Understood. And then you said it, I'm just giving people that understanding of how these different institutions operate in the country. So then you've got the trotro and the buses. Now those are two different public transportation systems. So like whenever you see a big bus, go ahead.
And the big buses are very, very rare. Very rare. Basically 2 trips in the morning, 2 trips in the evening is basically what you're looking at with the buses. The main lifeblood of transportation in Ghana is the trotro. I can say that for the whole country. The intra-city buses are all private. I don't believe VIP. STC is actually, I think ECOWAS subsidized something, STC, VVIP, OA. There's a few bus intra-city things. Those are all private. But yeah, I'm interested in what part they play, because there was some recent union action with the bus drivers, and the prices being increased with the intra-cities were part of it. So I don't know if the drivers are part of the union or how they are connected, but I guess it's all around to do with the petrol prices and what citizens agree to pay. So you have a situation where citizens will just outright refuse to pay a price increase, and so in order to get some gravitas, some heft to a price increase, they've got to be able to say that yes, this union has after conversation with the government has
Okay.
has
So
agreed with the price.
let me get this straight. Whenever there's a price hike, as far as transportation, the price hike could be due to the cost of energy, but you're saying that they generally blame it on unions demanding more wages, the workers of the
No, it wouldn't be. It would be literally to do with, because the petrol is going up.
Yes.
Because the price of energy is going up.
Yes.
To power the vehicle is costing more, so they're losing money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then sort of that price hike. When it's official that the petrol prices are not going back down. Right. There's no subsidy coming from within the union. As I understand it, the union helps out with some payouts to some of the drivers and things, where there's a temporary increase, but it's going to go back down in a week, and all that kind of thing. But once the prices have gone up, they're not going back down. They're not officially the internet. The prices go up, I should say.
Go up again. Okay. All right. And then and so a question on this then. In the Western world, there's been a rise in strikes across the board, in UK, in America, in France. Is Ghana seeing that same? And I think you began to answer this question a minute ago, but is Ghana seeing the levels of strikes increasing between and among the unions?
Around the Fix the Country movement, there was some striking around then. Teachers. I don't think public sector workers were part of it. But I think the blue collar, the engineers and so forth, they had been part. So that was a big protest that happened on the day that they strike. Stuff like that. So there was definitely an increase around then. And then you had a actual Trotro strike. Was that last year? I think it was late 2022. And I tell you one thing, I'd never seen a Trotro strike before. I didn't realize how they work. It is really crazy. The way they go after their what do you call people that strike that still work when there's a strike? There's a word there for them. What's the word for those guys?
I can't. Scabs.
Yeah. The way they go after scabs was crazy. So you have the drivers then, all right, they're not working, but they then congregate, them and their conductors will actually congregate around certain bus stops and prevent scabs from going. And it can get really, really crazy with tires being thrown under cars and stuff. It can really, really get crazy. And it's good that that this has come up, because this then is where the conversation comes up around the ideology piece, because what very often happens is the masses, because they're inconvenienced about going to work, they side against the drivers. Especially because the drivers are invariably saying that they need the prices to go up. So it's a weird kind of dynamic. We are saying we need the prices to go up in order for us to function. You, of course, as a citizen, you don't want the prices to go up. And then, of course, there's the interactive lived experience. You've been cheated by a conductor before. They didn't give you your change. All that kind of thing, which it feeds into how you process ideology. We can't dismiss that and say, how can you take real life out of a political conversation?
Interesting. I just say I've never been cheated by a Trotro driver. I've never experienced that. Like these men are some all of them I've experienced are honest people. Like they will wait and they will remember what change they're supposed to give you, and they will give you. You know what I'm saying?
The conductors, they generally are. I mean, I've been here for a long time now. I've taken a lot of Trotro in my time. And I wouldn't say that I've been outright cheated. And you know what? I would definitely say I have forgotten to give my money as much as
But yeah,
I haven't gotten my change. So
right,
as much
right,
as I
right.
know that I'm not waking up this morning to try and cheat a bus conductor,
Yeah, they might
I've got to
forget.
give them the benefit of the doubt that they, you know, they forgot to give me my change. Sometimes you'll get off, oh, you know, there's others,
Yeah,
it can
yeah.
be a big amount of money sometimes, you know. So it's just like everything else. So there's no culture. I would say there's definitely no culture of
Right, right. Of correct.
conductors cheating. But
Right.
yeah, it's just like with anything else, there's individuals, there's the conditions that day, there's maybe mothers that need extra, you know, need money for childcare or whatever that plays
Right.
into it. But there's definitely no culture of that, so you don't have that level. But when you have this sort of this schism or this dissonance or whatever between the fellow workers of different dimensions in different areas, you don't know when you're supposed to be solidarizing with your people,
Right. Right.
especially
Right.
because this petrol conflict that they're having is coming to affect you in another way.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe you've got a car, but you're trying to save money by taking the bus
Yeah.
that day,
Yeah.
or what the bread you're going to buy, the rice you're going to buy, all of that is going up in price
The price,
because of
yeah.
this very same thing. So
Yeah.
if we all solidarize together, you'll
Yes.
be in a
Yes. Yes.
situation where we hold our government accountable and we actually
Accountable,
ask the pertinent questions. Why are
yeah.
we not processing our own fuel?
Right.
In which event then we can have some control over
Right.
the prices? Because remember, this fuel
Yeah.
stuff, you can't call it a construct because it has a very real scientific benefit. But
Yeah.
you're pumping the stuff at the same rate as anything else. It's actually it's dirt. You know what I mean? It's dirt. That's why you have situations that you hear about in Dubai that, you know, the price is minuscule. Libya under Gaddafi, Texas. I think in the 80s and things that, you know, petrol was nothing. Why?
Yeah.
Because yes, you can sell it for a high amount, but to look after your population, you can control it and make a profit.
Yeah.
You will make a profit. You will make more than it costs you to mine it or to drill it.
Yeah.
But yes, you might not make as much as if you were to go and sell it to, you know, Germany or whatever. But yeah, ideology would decide that. Do you go by where you can get the best price, or do you go by empowering your country, making sure that your citizens don't spend? Because let me tell you, I always say it, like, I don't work 9 to 5. I don't work a 9 to 5. And for those who do, for many of those who do, and I hear about the prices that their jobs are being advertised at, I literally don't know how they function.
Right.
Like, how are you paying this amount?
What is the minimum wage in Ghana?
See, I should know that. The minimum wage, first of all, is not an hourly rate. It's
right.
I think is it daily? I think it's daily.
No worry, we'll come back to that. Yeah,
it's dreadfully low. Dreadfully low.
I could imagine. Yeah. So then, all right. For 2 questions on the subject of unions, then, because you've mentioned ideology, and so if we are looking at the solution of orientation, if we are educating our people in Ghana about the ideology of the government, and I guess when you say the government, you're not separating the 2 major political parties in terms of the ideology.
I never separate the 2 political parties. They are we've coined the term duopoly. Is what they are. It's not a monopoly. It's a duopoly. They both represent the same interests.
Right.
The MPs for both are the best of friends. They put on a show for the public to pretend that they are locked in some big battle of wills and opposition. But under no circumstances are these people not the best of friends and sharing out the stolen loot amongst themselves, maintaining the same agendas, suppressing us when they swap sides, agreeing to say, yeah, blame us for your first 3 years, you know, for everything you don't do when you come into power, blame us.
Yes.
And everything. Fully.
So then what is the ideology then, Gbontwi Anyetei? What are we saying is the ideology of these two political parties? Yeah, because some people might be confused. Some people say, oh, obviously we live in a capitalist society, so the ideology is capitalism. Some people who have read Nkrumah may say their ideology is neocolonialism. Some people who have listened to the pronouncements of Nana Akufo-Addo would say that he's a Pan-Africanist. And a noted Pan-Africanist at that. So what is the ideology that we're referring to that we need our people to understand? Is the ideology
I get ill. I get physically sick at the very notion of Akufo-Addo being a Pan-African. And I feel so sad for anybody who is deceived along those lines in any way. But yeah, the ideology is definitely neocolonialism, and it's not even capitalism. I think Frantz Fanon said that the political class of Africa has accepted being the junior partners of capitalism.
Yes.
So if you do any kind of study of capitalism, what it was either intended to be, or what the idealists of capitalism thought it was going to be, whether Adam Smith or whatever, we know that even the West is not abiding by that. Or the oligarchies, or the bailouts, all of these things go against what capitalism was supposed to be. So exactly what they say capitalism is supposed to be. Apologies. What they say capitalism is supposed to be. So if you can imagine that in the birthplace of capitalism, the original scholars of capitalism, the Britons and the Americas, it is being defied. You can imagine that those who are trying to imitate the imitations, you can see how far we fall short. I think we made, was it in the we've had that conversation before where we talked about Nkrumah's state enterprises. You know, the terms that people have for him, he was anti-capitalist, he was a communist, but in his time he created more enterprises than the so-called capitalists have. So what do you say about what capitalism is then, when the one who's supposed to be anti-capitalist was creating more enterprise, trying to create more state-backed businesses and commerce for the population to enjoy? You know what I mean?
It's a funny thing that they never actually address, but it's an argument to the fact that capitalism as an ideology is propaganda to maintain the power of white nations, basically, right? You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't actually matter what you've done. The extent to which you act in and outside of their interest, you know, kind of defines how they characterize you, right? You know what I'm saying? And what they focus on in that respect. For example, the idea that whereas they will characterize Nkrumah as a socialist, the people that and Nkrumah self-identify as a socialist, but I'm talking about the propaganda, as a communist, more to the point, because Nkrumah more identifies as a socialist, but they'll call Nkrumah as a communist. They don't do the same with those who came after him, right? Whereas they didn't develop anything, but they don't call Ankara a capitalist when the ideology that drove him was partly anti what Nkrumah was supposed to have been dealing with, right? So he comes in pro-Western. Everybody after him becomes pro-Western, but they never put them in an ideology. They never give them an ideological title in the way that they do for somebody like an Nkrumah. Whereas they were definitely part of their job within the context of the Cold War was to make sure that Western capitalism it maintains its interest in a nation such as Ghana. But I like the way you've put it, that they're not even capitalists. They're what was the time you use again? The
junior partner.
Junior partner.
Junior partner.
Yeah, I was gonna say clients of capitalists. Yeah, so
Yeah,
they're not even astute enough to be capitalist. They're just
exactly,
clients. Yeah, serving the
exactly,
interest of capitalists and a global capitalist economy.
exactly. And people
That
are asking
run.
those
Sorry,
questions.
go on.
People are asking those questions like more immediately right now because
Right.
so many businesses, because of the power issues, because of the failings of the city, so many businesses literally in the last few months have pulled out of Ghana. And so the question so many people are asking, non-revolutionary, just normal. Hold on, we thought you were capitalist, like, but you're not even doing the capitalism well. Like businesses that are with you in the capitalism element, all the things you believe in as capitalists, they're underpaying their staff, they're using poisonous ingredients, all the things that are proudly capitalist and unchecked capitalism at that. They are leaving they're leaving the country. So what are we supposed to make of that? So some very interesting questions are being posed.
Right.
Yeah.
So the question then becomes, Gbontwi, and you touched on it already, but just to put a crowd on it, why are the unions in Ghana so powerless?
It's that same education lack. So no Ghanaian should leave school without a proper orientation around what the political situation is and where their interests lie. But of course, most Ghanaians do, if not all. Leave school. If you're going to get it from anywhere, you're going to get it from maybe a parent who's an Nkrumahist, family member. Or if you are lucky, a teacher outside of anything that you can get, examined on will break down certain things for you. So you have a situation now where unions, and I know a lot of people will throw this accusation out about a lot of unions generally, is that they are just only concerned with salaries and and not even high salaries of any particular kind, but literally just making sure that salaries are adjusted for inflation. Nothing beyond that as far as quality of training, as far as making sure that state enterprises have X amount of money pumped back in, like some serious things that make what they're doing more sustainable and that will guarantee jobs for the children coming after them and so forth. So I consider myself an Nkrumahist and a Garveyite. If we decide to go, okay, let's go all nationalistic. Let's go nationalism only on the Garveyite tip. If a union, if a union and one that has any kind of pride in themselves and want to see themselves as an institution that is respected and has that level of pride, sort of respect attached to it by the masses, they would educate their membership. It wouldn't just be about paying. It wouldn't just be about paying dues. It wouldn't be about some of the very, very petty rule enforcement that we hear of, but they would really look to make sure that their membership are fully understand why neoliberalism generally is killing us, and then how their struggle as workers connects to the struggles of others, whether it's drivers, whether it's nurses, whether it's even students who rise up occasionally.
This is an interesting point. Go on, finish it there. I relate it to an experience that we're having in the UK. Go on.
Okay. You need to have that sort of understanding because that gives you more power. It's not just, you're not giving yourself a martyr complex. It gives you more power because you realize that because you have solidarized with basically every other citizen of Ghana when they have struggled,
Yeah.
When it comes to your struggle, people understand, first of all, you had our back. And second of all, when you have our back, we get stronger. So it's just win, 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 win. But you don't have any of that. It's very localized in very petty way. It's very siloed off where people don't even understand how their struggles connect to others. And it's just really, it's cannibalized, because then on top of all of this vacuum of a mass supporting ideology, you've also got the fact that your membership, don't believe in you. Petty corruptions, leadership are supposed to be alleged to have taken this and that, and all of this. It's criminal.
I was gonna
treasonous, in fact.
100%. I was gonna relay this to some of the things, some of the dynamics. Just watching the rise of union activity in the UK. Like basically every union that exists in the UK has had a strike, and multiple strikes in the last couple of years in the UK, right? But just related to what you're saying in terms of the dynamics of it. The unions, especially the transport unions, the train strikers and so on, have very good PR, extremely good public relations, to the point whereby they can inconvenience the entire city of London, and half the city will defend them. Right. This what I'm saying. The half the city that is being they can't get to work, and they can't go to the next city or whatever. But there's a significant amount of the population that defends the strikers, not just their right to strike, but what they're striking for. And then between unions, so that like every now and then, especially under this government, which is a conservative government, there's an attempt to play off one union against the other. So the nurses union against the transport unions, And I remember one time on Question Time, they were talking about this, and one guest tried to get another guest, to basically turn against the other that I think it was the nurses union turn against the transport union, based upon the fact that they were all trying to get a wage increase from the government, and the idea was that the government couldn't pay for it all, right? And both of them decided they weren't going to play into that game. They understood that their job was to advocate on behalf of their workers, but they weren't going to get into a fight with each other over what the government's refusing to do or what their companies are refusing to do, because transport union is you're related. It's a cross between most of the transport is by private companies, corporations, whereas the nursing is the government. But there's a relationship between two, because the infrastructure is run by the transport infrastructure is run by the government. So
is Virgin Train still a thing?
They've been taken over by West Avanti West.
Okay.
Yeah, what I'm saying, they've been bought out by another, and they've got all kinds of problems going on. So people are advocating for the nationalization of the rails again, because So whereas the argument for privatization is always efficiency, supposedly the private corporations are always more efficient, when that's not proven to be the case. So all kinds of different things. But the point I'm making is that what you're correct in the sense of political. All of that is possible because of a certain level of political education and public relations, right? And so the solution to that again is political education and public relations, in terms of why the people not turning against the trotro drivers, and you know what I'm saying, because they're understanding the holistic dimension to it. And then the other side to it is about development, because you mentioned the fact that a lot of these oil hacks, and if anybody studied the oil industry even casually, you'd understand that the oil is a racket. All this talk that they give you about the market deciding prices and nonsense, like these oil producing nations and the capitalist corporations that run them play with the oil prices at their will. It's a bloody mafia operation. Oil is in this world today. And so the fact of, and that is why a lot of countries are kept away. kept away deliberately from being able to refine their own oil, because then it would have an impact upon the profits of these corporations. So that leads into what you were saying about Nkrumah and just developing the productive capacity of the nation. It's very important, and it has an impact. It's long term planning, so it will take a while for the benefits to kick in, but when they do, you know, it's better for everybody. So yeah,
100%, man. Price fixing is a thing, and in big oil, especially. And you know, that's why you know I wanted to have this conversation, because you know I've spoken about already sort of, you know, building up our empathy and understanding that our struggles are connected, which very much so we've seen here. But also understanding, I think, what parts we as the population, you know, have to play. It's our fault and it's not our fault. We've gone through an education system and a socialization process, by means of media and everything else, that have really got us thinking and feeling that we are powerless, really, ultimately. But you know, the power is there, and understanding how just flipping our mindset just a little bit. Like I say, this is a good example that you put there with people not being too mad at, you know, two drivers. Like I remember, you know, I would always say that people got angrier at teachers going to strike than the two train drivers and stuff. Because you know, so one, of course, you know, why should that be the case? Because yes, one is transporting you to your salaried position, but one is also looking after the well-being of your children. You should want them both, you know, well compensated. And it's interesting that you said that it's because of mostly PR, but then you also got into the solidarity element of it too, and sort of the nurses, I think you said it was, understanding how they're connected and not letting them be played off against each other. Because you can imagine in the negotiating room, the government negotiators would have played that up for all that they are worth. We've only got this amount in the budget. You know, we wanted to give it to you, but they're saying this, like, you know, the divide and conquer would have been at an all-time high.
Definitely. One of the major factors. So I was gonna say one of the major factors that did that is the amount of profits that the train companies are making. That became a significant, like a public, like the profits of the company owners, the managers, and their shareholders has just gone up exponentially. So basically, so the idea that you can't give us a pay rise just became ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of the ways to do it. So it's about the political education and understanding that.
That's the knowledge, isn't it? One of the things that I'm scared of with Ghana is I feel like there's a lot of information out there, but I think I comfort myself with the fact that I'm in an echo chamber of revolutionaries. And it's quite evident in a lot of conversations I have that this information isn't as readily known as I think it is, around how much money cocoa turns into, how much money gold turns into, how much money our oil turns into, how much money even aluminium now, you know, and all of this is turning into. And lithium is about to become a big thing as well. To understand that every single issue you are going to experience in 24 hours as a Ghanaian could be eliminated in 1 year if the resources were well powered, were well managed after 1 year. The billions involved, if you were to manage and negotiate a proper deal, your hospitals, your schools, your roads, it could literally, that's all it would take. But understanding, using unions as an example now, but if, you know, for our audience that have been listening, I hope we're going to get to the questions now. For our audience that have been paying attention, this is just an example of it. We're going all the way back to our first one. We used that Neely Fuller area of people activity. Like, that was intentional to show that there's literally, for whoever you are, whatever your level of education, whatever your interests are, whether you're a creative, whether you're a scientist, whether you are just somebody that works with their hands, unskilled labor, expert, professional, whatever, you have a point of entry to understanding an area of oppression and having some part in uplifting us as a people. You know what I mean? And so, today we're having a conversation around unions. And I think I chose unions because unions don't get spoken about in Ghana as much as they should. You know, unions should have so much to say around everything, around environmental stuff, around transport, because their workers can't get to work at a certain price, and reliability of this and that. And unfortunately, they only get spoken about occasionally, with the occasional threatened strike. And then of the threatened strike, maybe 1 in 5 turns into an actual strike. You know?
Okay.
Yeah, it's a real shame.
All right. We're going to get onto our next topic in a second. I want to say that you can ask questions, brothers and sisters. Please at gotkushTV if you want to ask a question, at gotkushTV, so I know that your question is intended for our panel, or a comment. You might want to make a comment. We're not only taking questions, you can add to the conversation as well. Please at gotkushTV if you want to do so, and so that we know that your comment or your question is in fact intended for us to read. And we'll star it. And you can also super chat if you so wish. If you want to make a financial contribution with your comment, feel free to do so as well. And we do want to maybe another subject for another time, but I'm convinced that market women in Ghana need a union. I'm just convinced.
Because they've got associations.
Right.
And then, you know, they unite for, they do susu, you know, collective economics and things. But as far as a conventional union, I don't know about that. But I don't think there's anything stopping them, even their trade associations, for operating as a union. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because they could wreak havoc around a lot of things, around the level of imports, around around GMO stuff, Food Sovereignty Ghana. Who I've mentioned in at least one of our previous podcasts. They do a lot of some advocacy work with the market women recently, and that's something we have to talk about in a future podcast. There was a sign off by this on this GMO thing, and to listen to the sort of government noises that were coming out about this sign off of the GMO thing, is that food production was an issue in Ghana. And anybody that has been to Ghana, anybody that's even heard any stereotype about Ghana would know that food production is never our issue. There's a bounty of all these so-called, what you would call, if you don't live in Ghana, exotic fruits. There's never any issue. We don't need GMO here. Why is GMO the only thing that is brought here? And so they have some interactions, a lot of interactions with the market women, saying, why are the government bringing about GMO when you, our market women, who are our, not even you are like the referees, the umpires of trade. You know, around agriculture, of course, and other things, but agriculture specifically here. Have you been hearing from your people that are passing that, your bananas are too curved, we need straight ones? The oranges are not orange enough. Like, what is the call to action that our so-called government that are looking after our interests, of all the things that Ghanaians complain about on a daily basis? It's this that you choose.
Like you said, the ideology of the government is neocolonialism, and so if GMO mass corporations want markets in Africa, the government will institute policies to ensure that their products come into the country. That's just what it 100%. Is. That's what you call it, being a I forgot the terminology again. You know.
Junior partners.
That's what junior partners to capitalist governments and corporations do. They ensure that those governments and those corporations have markets.
Finance said junior partners. It was Nkrumah that said client states.
Client
handbook of
state,
revolution
yeah.
warfare, where they've made us a client state. Yeah.
Right. Do you know what I'm saying? And then what happens is that the consequence of that, yeah, the trade-off where that is concerned is that the indigenous production is killed off and or stifled, yeah, for the sake of, and one of the major issues that we have in all of our nations is the fact that foreign produce is cheaper because it comes into the country from the production of those goods is subsidized by the governments from which they come, right? So it's cheaper to import rice than it is to sell rice that is grown in Ghana or in Haiti. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it's a mad situation, brothers and sisters. But we got a few to get through, brothers and sisters. You can at gotkushTV if you want to ask a question or make a comment in the chat. And down here, we've got good examples or effective examples of nationalism. Yeah. So we've talked about the neocolonial nature of the government. So let's look at effective examples of nationalism. Why is that a topic that we have to deal with in the context of this subject?
Effective examples of nationalism. I hope the person is still in the chat. What exactly do they mean by that? Do they mean in our recent history? Do they mean...
No, this was on the docket for in terms of
Oh, I get you. Okay. Yeah. So that's what I'm talking about. I mean, you know, so in this conversation piece, it would literally be around, you know, we could start with sort of education,
right.
And sort of economic understanding of the power we've got as a nation and what a nation's resource should mean to you as a citizen of it and somebody who is, you know, owns a piece of land. Maybe you've even voted, and so these people are supposed to be carrying your mandate. You get me? Right. So it's that kind of conversation around that. So we're not even talking about anything too grandstanding. It's about understanding what a nation is supposed to be. There's very often a conversation around, you know, around identity and what is it to be a Ghanaian? What is it to be you know? And many people can't answer that question because we haven't had that either basic or robust conversation about what, as a Ghanaian, you feel you are, your identity is, what demands you make of your family, your community, your ethnicity, your local government, your central government, and things like this. So for me, it always comes back down to education. That's more the longer state of play, but it's the more sustainable and it's the more rewarding one.
Right, in the long run.
Some
people might be saying, though, by the way, just by way of definition, nationalism, identification with one's own nation and support for its interests, especially to the exclusion or detriment of the interests of other nations. So one might be suggesting, Gbontwi Anyetei, that why are we promoting nationalism here? Is that what you mean when you say nationalism? You know what I'm saying? And does the nationalism that you're promoting, let's be more specific, have to operate to the detriment of other nations, specifically other African nations? That
is a question that always comes from sort of scarcity mindset, you know, to in any way, and trauma, I would say too, in any way to straight away correlate nationalism with lack, i.e. taken away from somebody else, is a major problem across the African world. We talk about uniting as Africa. Oh, why do we hate white people? It's like, whoa, how do you get there? How is loving yourself hating anybody else, you know, or wanting to marginalize anybody? Because yes, as a traumatized people and people that haven't studied our trauma and the causes of our trauma, we straight away conflate nationalism with racism, basically, and that, you know, that's I was going to say that the two are not mutually like the two shouldn't be conflated at all. And yeah, so when I speak about nationalism, it's what I've been speaking about thus far. nationalism to me automatically translates into Pan-Africanism straight away, first of all, as Africans, because there's no African country that I know of that hasn't got massive pilgrimage pilgrimage stories where a massive amount of your population isn't coming from elsewhere in Africa. So to be nationalistic is to straight away have allegiance with countries, or what today are countries, and states that your nation passed through, that you share genealogy and hereditary with. You know what I mean? So yeah, please, everybody watching this, please do not think that with nationalism, it has anything to do with all the negative connotations of nationalism.
It also sounds like you're not tying it specifically to the nation state of Ghana, like the state apparatus.
I mean, the nation state of Ghana is, I know, in a future time, these borders will be gone. Right. And so when I speak of Ghana, it's a real thing. I have to think and talk materially. It's where we are. But at the same time, with everything I do, I'm always thinking in a future sense. And in Nkrumah, in our original, and to my mind, our best constitution, you know, the only stipulation to Ghana's sovereignty was in the event that Africa united, in which case Ghana, would, what would be the right term? I was going to use the word subjugate, but that sounds negative. Okay. Ghana would take its rightful place within a united Africa, you know, as a member of that, and allow, you know, a lot of its power, decision-making power to travel up to whatever the power system overarching over the continent, and to my mind as well, African communities and societies outside of the continent, as well. So so I speak of Ghana as an extremely temporary institution. The borders that were created, we have to give credit to Nkrumah. The Ghana that we have now is not the Ghana that the British created, actually. By, you know, Nkrumah, you know, taking on, you know, Volta, Togoland, I think, as the Germans had it named. Was it called Transvolta? It was called Transvolta, wasn't it? You know, it became a new state with new borders that didn't exist under the British. So we should definitely accept that, and you know, give Nkrumah his founder his credit as a founder. But he, in his own words, said that independence was meaningless, and also in the constitution, he said that yes, at any time Africa was to become united, Ghana would support that and become would take our part within that system.
100%. Even signed an agreement with Patrice Lumumba for a union of states to be headquartered in Congo. Yes,
he did. And that wasn't the only one. He had one with Mali and Guinea Conakry too. So he was he had no illusions. The amount of pride he should have had worldwide at the time, he was a celebrity, and rightly so, until to this day, despite many ways his legacy has been challenged and undermined. He still didn't want, you know, basically his claim to fame to be permanent. He was very happy at any time for Ghana to take its place within a more serious conglomeration of nations. Ideally, all of Africa. But if it needed it to be Ghana, Congo, or Ghana, Mali, Guinea, he would do that too.
Right there. Yep. 100%. We've got a comment here from Priestess Rao. Greetings, my sister. She says, in Kenya, a civilian stopped me and said, it's the people who are responsible for the decisions of the government, not the other way around. I think that kind of relates to some of what you've been saying, but what's your reaction to that particular statement?
It definitely does. It definitely does, because we don't have that power that we don't know the power that we have. So very, very often you will talk to Ghanaians, and I hope I haven't fallen into this trap in any of our podcast conversations, and we speak about government as not only abstract, but something that we have no control over, and that, you know, it's very, very important that we understand that regardless of the language that they intentionally use and their behaviors with the V8 engines and the motorcades, they are intentionally sending us spiritual symbolism that we are better than you, we are different from you. But we have to understand that they actually do work for us, and all the usual things, we outnumber them at any given time. We are to press our trigger, we could have these people removed. You know what I mean? And we have to never lose track, lose touch of the fact that we are the ones in charge. It can be very hard to remember sometimes, but that's why we need to unite. That's why all the failings of the unions are reflected in the failings of other institutions, and thus having a miseducated Ghana and a Ghanaian population that doesn't understand the power that we have and how we could really bring the government to heel, and place a government in there that serves our purposes. So that's what, you know, Economic Fighters League, you know, we are always trying to be about, educating our fellow Ghanaians to know the power that we have.
So we're gonna approach the conclusion of our show soon. We're trying not to make these sessions too long, brothers and sisters, so everybody can take them in a reasonable period of time. But I guess that we've touched on this already. But the question of how nationalism can be raised, is a good place to conclude. You've spoken about the fact that we need consciousness raising to raise awareness and so on and so forth. Let's look at the mechanics of that, the logistics of that in a nation such as Ghana. What does that look like? What does consciousness and nationalism raising look like in Ghana?
Nkrumah did so many things, and one of the things he did do, but maybe didn't do fast enough, was the Ideological Institute. The Winneba Ideological Institute. So his plan was to have various professionals and students to go to this school to basically give them orientation around the politics of Nkrumahism, Pan-Africanism, for them to understand what role they played within whatever they thought as their small way. And then he had the Nkrumah youth, and then you also had young pioneers, I should say, sorry. Young pioneers. And then you also had even just the moving cars, you know, with basically messaging being pumped out of them at a high volume. So it can look a lot of different ways. Schools is the easiest place because you could literally have a new curriculum. We have the books. We've got Nkrumah's books. We've got books by many scholars. We've got lectures. We've got documentaries. We've got songs. We've got songs. I remember somebody using a Bob Marley song, using it to explain dialectical materialism. Which song was it? So we have the material now. We have more material than Nkrumah had, more material than Castro had. A lot of revolutionary leaders, and we have more material than that we can use. So it can be as formal as you like, it can be as academic as you like, it can be as artistic as you like. But that's what it would look like for me. At straight up, you've got an ideological institute, you've got media service. So that's what I would start with, explaining everything that's happening in the country why it has to be like that, what parts the population plays, what parts, what the benefits are, what the ideology is of people who are opposing what we're trying to do in the country. And this applies with whether you're in the revolutionary place or not. So if you right now we are a captured state. So that's why you have revolutionaries doing what we do, of using social media, using podcasts, also trying to do the whole loudspeaker thing as well on the ground here in Ghana, to get that going.
To do the loudspeaker thing, though, you got to pass through, all of the churches. You know, all of that. I remember in Circle one time, because like there's always people preaching in Accra, if in everywhere, from the church to the street corner to everywhere. But there was a big there was a rise in like this Hebrew kind of doctrine. That was coming up in Ghana, and this guy was preaching hard, in the circle, and you don't see a lot of Pan-Africanists doing that. Is there an issue with Pan-Africanists doing street preaching? Is that a medium that the organizers are not utilizing properly?
I would say that, and we're gonna have a whole conversation, like I said, criticizing us on that. But I think Pan-Africanists, because we see our message as so, ironically, it's become very niche. The street corners and stuff are taken over by the kind of like you're saying, the clerics and stuff like that, and the preachers. And we unfortunately reserve our conversations for kind of like revolutionary work studies amongst ourselves, and then conferences and stuff like that. So the street corner isn't. So I actually wrote a short film, which I really need to work more aggressively on making. The Chocho Pasta, I called it. Which is, instead a man gets up, and instead of it being a talking about the Bible as usual, he's
salvation.
Instead quoting Amilcar Cabral and Thomas Sankara and Nkrumah and thing. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Interesting. Another thing then. To what extent is the Ghana population like locked into radio, traditional radio? Is radio still a big thing in Ghana?
Yeah, radio is the biggest. Radio is bigger than social media.
Right.
It's bigger than TV. The party communicators. I mean, that's the big hype men. That's the best word for them. There, hype men. They just come making noise about their party. They lie half the time, and then if anybody cares to sort of fact check, then they'll apologize the next time and say they didn't actually say that when they did. All this kind of thing. So these hype men, they do radio stations, I would argue, more than they do the TV station.
Right. It's interesting because like I'm thinking my experience like in just taking public transport in Accra mainly, like if you're not listening to music or you're not listening to preacher, you're listening to a political debate. And even if you can't understand them, maybe speaking Chida, maybe speaking Ghana, maybe speaking
can I correct? You are hearing a party debate. You're not hearing political debate. I know it's a small thing.
It's a good distinction. It's a good distinction, But then it would seem to be that's the avenue, or one of the avenues again, that those who are trying to raise the national consciousness of the people need to be taken, right? So I don't know like the extent to which like is like like we got in UK pirate radio, you know what I'm saying? It's gonna have pirate radio.
That's something that we've thought about to try and get on, and also you have to keep in mind too that the parties, as part of state capture, when they come in, they invariably suppress radio stations that have a general discourse speaking to the alternative, So you have a number of radio stations that are only just now getting back online just in time for the elections, where it's presumed that this party is definitely going. But yeah, you have that's also an element of it too. But yeah, that is definitely a legitimate criticism. We do Economic Fighters League. We do street work, where many of our sales are active. When we after our conversations, we hit the street and speak to people on street sides and things, but nothing with the kind of level of consistency as the churches and stuff. So it's something that we've worked on. We've gotten projectors to project documentaries on screens and stuff. White sheets, I should say. Yeah, so definitely an uphill battle, but yeah, the Aluta Continua, we're on it.
On it, right? Cool. And then finally on this, we have a new show on gotkushTV called All Eyes on Africa, presented by brother Sam P.K. Collins. And in our preview, in his first episode, he talked about the relationship between Italy and Ghana, because the Italian president recently traveled to Ghana. Yeah, one of the things that he mentioned though in his breakdown is the fact that there's an issue with journalists in Ghana. Harassment, sometimes even assassination, and even exile of journalists in Ghana. There was a few examples given in the video. So brothers and sisters, go watch that.
I have to go watch that too. I haven't watched that, unfortunately.
You know what I'm saying? But just to speak on that, because we're talking about radio and them kind of things there, but that takes into consideration journalism. Yeah. So is it that beyond just to give our viewers an idea of the environment, beyond suppressing alternative institutions like media institutions, is it to what extent is the harassment of journalism an issue in Ghana, political journalists?
It's definitely an issue. It's definitely an issue. We don't give, and I'm very guilty of this. We don't give our media sort of, is the word, enough credit or enough recognition of the persecution they receive. I think, we speak about the state capture that Ghana has undergone, and generally the state capture element with the media is the kind of like the brown envelopes at every government press release and stuff like that. And this is not specific brown envelopes. Don't talk about this issue. Don't talk about this issue. This is just general sort of gratuities to just generally silence the journalists. So we give a lot of credit. Let me speak for myself. I and fellow critics give a lot of credit to that sort of envelope misculture. I really respect the word culture. I don't like to use the word culture for dysfunctional things like that. And so that's the thing. But then you do also have journalists who try to go outside of that that narrative, and they are harassed. So I think the year before last, you had the army go to, I think it was City TV, and City TV are not by any means radical. They are at best these kind of like governance sort of media. They want the government to do the job that they said they're going to do. So they're kind of like they're on the governance tip, they don't speak to any counter ideology per se, or any kind of like the masses owning the means of production or anything like that. But they go to City FM, City TV, which they do also have a radio station. And these are soldiers, mind you. They went, and the pretext that they used for harassing the station that day was that the station had gone and filmed. It wasn't even the day before. It was like within the last week, they had gone and filmed what they were calling a security zone. And the newspaper story, the story was literally cars. Is a car park full of brand new cars that had never been issued. So they were just there gathering dust. So this was the news that the station had got to cover. So this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. City, they would be into. It's like, how do you have these cars and you're not, you're not, dispatching them, or why did you buy them in the first place? All this kind of thing. And there was some violence. I'm not sure about I would confirm the level of violence that took place that day, but you could see that this was like a show of muscle. This is a show of muscle. That it's the ideal story to go and knock some heads together on, whereby it's nothing too dangerous, but show them that if you tell a story the way we don't like, we're going to send soldiers in, we're going to break stuff, we're going to have our big guns scaring all of you and all of that. So there was that, and then you've got the murder of a journalist that used to work with Anas. He died. He was shot.
Is that Ahmed Hussein Soleil?
Exactly. Swale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Swale.
Yeah. So he was shot. And all now there's no, they hadn't made a documentary recently. But all now we don't know who did it and why. One MP, I mean, he was very public with it. Kennedy Achapong heavily hinted that he was involved. And, to the extent that if he, if we were a serious country, he would have been questioned, basically.
Right.
And so you have a situation where that wasn't properly investigated. And so it's that sort of thing. So you have then, I won't call it, once again, I won't use the word culture, but you have a quiet agenda of suppression and intimidation. It's nothing compared to what you hear about from our sister nations, the Nigerias and the Ugandas and the Tanzanias, where, people just get, rendition from their homes and stuff like that. But there is definitely that kind of like carrot and the stick. There's the brown envelope, take that and, eat some pizza every weekend, or there's going to be soldiers at in your offices, and there won't be any apology for those soldiers, and there won't be any kind of like inquiry into what brought them there, and then some sort of promise of protection to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it's that kind of a thing. So it's that kind of like lawlessness, and kind of like, if you don't feel safe, how are you going to publish any stories that are critical? You know what I mean?
All right. Understood. So there's challenges there, brothers and sisters. We touched on a lot today. Check out last week's edition of the Zivanai show, where we will talk about African-centered education, because a lot of that breakdown, and what an African-centered curriculum will look like, because it relates to a lot of what Gbontwi was saying in terms of developing education that speaks to those needs. You'll find a lot of the connections in there in terms of educating the children and the students about the politics of their nation, right? You know what I'm saying? You'll be surprised how much even students in the UK know very little about civics, how to engage politically, and so on and so forth. And so that's one of the things that even in the UK, African Saturday schools teach to children, civics. What does your government look like in the UK, or the government look like, and so on and so forth, right? So it's a topic. I want to say that we will be doubling up our Ghana Democracy Under Fire for the month of May, which is actually quite
We're going again.
Yes, indeed. On the 28th of May, we'll be back again. So do stay tuned for all of that. And it's appropriate because this is Africa Liberation Day month, brothers and sisters. And so we will be in alignment with the general energy Pan-African wise that is taking place around the world. I'm going to be probably for the first time in my life out of the country, out of the UK, for African Liberation. I'm going to be in the USA, so I'll be observing some African Liberation Day events out there in the USA. So I look forward to seeing brothers and sisters on the other side of the waters. This has been Ghana, Democracy Under Fire, our episode 3. Our topic has been Beyond Strict Ideology and Dialectics. And we've been discussing with you, specifically focusing on the issue of unions and raising national consciousness through the viability of unions among our people in Ghana. We hope that you have been well informed, and we look forward to seeing you on the 28th of May for another episode of Ghana, Democracy Under Fire. You know, I forgot to do one. I forgot to just check with you if there's anything final that you wanted to say before we conclude.
No. Yeah, I've said a lot.
Yep.
This is just going to make our future conversation even better. I've made some notes,
All
some
right,
things
cool.
to research and respond, come back to.
Yes, indeed. I want to let you know, brothers and sisters, I should let you know that tomorrow, going to be hosting the panel. We're going to be talking about Drake versus Kendrick tomorrow, brothers and sisters. Yes, indeed. We're going to get into the beef, yeah? Well, we're asking the question, rap beef or culture war? Rap beef or culture war? I'm going to be here with the brother Rakeem Shabazz, who I've interviewed before, and possibly a couple other guests. But it's going to be an open panel, so that we'll get into who you think is winning, whatever, however you think about it. But there's some themes here in this beef. Yeah, there's some themes in the tracks that have been released by these two artists that require, you know, some exploration among us, brothers and sisters. And so, yeah, you know what I mean? We're going to get into that tomorrow. Yeah, so do stay tuned. But for now, we bid you farewell. Yeah, we bid you farewell. As we say, Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodi, African power and African liberation for all African people. Ashe, ashe, ashe.
I can't think about this democracy. 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 Democracy, demonstration of praise demonstration. Keep up the praise. Why for us?